The Wild West is remembered for gun smoke and glory, but what's often forgotten is how much of that firepower the West itself tried to suppress. Behind every revolver's shine was a town ordinance, a frightened sheriff, or a headline warning citizens to disarm. These weren't just tools of defense, they were sparks for chaos. Some guns were feared not because of what they did, but what they could do. Tonight, we explore 8 weapons so controversial, so lethal, that they were banned across frontier America. The legends carried them, the law condemned them, and history never forgot them. Hidden pistols, outlawed rifles, and revolvers you couldn't even wear inside town lines. This is the real story of the guns the West refused to tolerate. Welcome to Lead and Legacy, where we bring forgotten frontier truths back into the light. Hit subscribe, drop a like, and let's step into the danger that built the legend. Number 8, the Bowie knife revolver, half gun, half blade, fully outlawed. When gunsmiths got creative, lawmakers got nervous. Few inventions embodied that tension, like the Bowie knife revolver, a hybrid of steel and insanity. Imagine a revolver with a massive Bowie blade mounted beneath the barrel, or a knife handle concealing a hidden shot chamber. These weren't toys, they were instruments of assassination. Frontier courts saw them as symbols of dishonor. A man carrying one wasn't looking for a fair fight, he was preparing for a kill. Georgia's 1846 Nunn versus State ruling partially protected handgun ownership, but still upheld restrictions on concealed weapons, and Bowie knives topped that list. By the 1850s, multiple territories outright banned them. Their reputation was their undoing. You could carry a revolver openly and face no charge, but draw a Bowie gun hybrid and you'd be branded a coward, fined, or worse. Even hardened outlaws avoided them, knowing the weapon itself marked them as assassins. Would you have trusted a blade that could also fire? Or left such a monstrosity behind, knowing that even owning one could end your freedom? Number 7, the pepperbox pistol, chaos in the palm of your hand. Imagine a cluster of barrels rotating like a miniature cannon. The pepperbox pistol looked terrifying, and often was. Some models had 4 barrels, others 6, each loaded and ready to fire. Pull the trigger, and a new barrel lined up to shoot again. It was the frontier's first attempt at rapid fire, but it came with a deadly flaw. Pepper boxes were cheap, heavy, and mechanically unstable. A worn trigger could ignite every barrel at once, turning the gun into a hand grenade. Newspapers of the 1850s called them pocket cannons, weapons more likely to harm the shooter than the target. Town marshals quickly grew tired of cleaning up the aftermath. Cities lumped them into the same bands as Derringers. Too easy to hide, too unpredictable to trust. Yet gamblers loved them, not for accuracy but intimidation. A man pulling a pepper box from his coat didn't need to aim. The sight of those 6 barrels was threat enough. Would you have carried one, knowing it might explode in your own hand? Or gone unarmed inside towns that forbade your revolver altogether? The frontier forced every man to gamble, sometimes with his weapon, sometimes with his life. Number 6, Derringers and pocket pistols, the hidden killers. They were small enough to disappear in a sleeve, a vest pocket, or a boot, and that was exactly the problem. The Derringer and its tiny cousins were the favorite companions of gamblers, barkeeps, and drifters who wanted power without permission. The most infamous, the Philadelphia Derringer, changed American history the day John Wilkes Booth used one to assassinate President Lincoln. On the frontier, towns like Tombstone, Deadwood, and Abilene didn't fear armies. They feared surprise. Concealed weapons were the mark of an ambush, not a duel. Laws were swift. No hidden guns inside the city limits. If you carried one of these pocket pistols beneath your coat, you weren't armed for self-defense. You were breaking the law. Derringers became known as weapons of assassins. They fired only once, but that single shot was often all it took. One pull of the trigger, one puff of smoke, and a man could vanish into the crowd. So tell me, if you'd been walking through Dodge City in 1880, would you have trusted your life to one of these tiny pistols? Or risked carrying a full-size revolver and facing the sheriff's wrath? Number 5, Street revolvers, banned for firing, not for carrying. We picture the Old West as a thunder of gunfire echoing down every dusty street. In reality, most frontier towns were desperate to stop that sound. Ordinances across the Dakota and Montana territories prohibited the discharge of firearms within town limits. The reason? Not duels, accidents. Celebratory shots during dances and holidays, drunken saloon brawls, even target practice in back alleys too often ended in tragedy. Bullets fired skyward didn't vanish. They landed in crowds, roofs, and sometimes children. Lawmen like Theodore Roosevelt in his Dakota days enforced no shooting zones with iron certainty. The iconic Colt single-action army wasn't banned for existing, it was banned for echoing. A man could wear it on his belt, but fire it in town and he'd face a fine or a cell. Imagine the restraint that took in an era built on pride and provocation. Would you have holstered your temper when every insult begged for lead? Number 4. Repeating rifles banned on the railroad. The Winchester 1873 earned the title, the gun that won the West. On open plains, it was a marvel. 15 rounds in half a minute, reliable, accurate, and deadly. But once you stepped aboard a train, it became a liability. By the early 1880s, major railroads, including the Union Pacific and Central Pacific, instituted strict bans. Passengers were ordered to check their rifles with baggage clerks. No long guns allowed in passenger cars. The reason was pragmatic, not political. Too many accidental discharges. Wooden carriages, kerosene lamps, and packed crowds turned every spark into potential catastrophe. Newspapers documented heated complaints from settlers forced to travel unarmed through hostile country. But railroad companies refused to budge. One errant bullet could rupture a boiler or kill a child sleeping 3 rows away. Would you have obeyed the conductor's rules or kept your Winchester hidden beneath your seat, trusting the iron horse less than your own trigger? Number 3, the Colt revolver, banned in Dodge City. Few images define the West like a man walking under the sign at the edge of Dodge City. The carrying of firearms strictly prohibited. This was no symbolic warning. By the late 1870s, Dodge was a boiling cauldron of cattle money, whiskey, and gun smoke. Sheriffs Bat Masterson and Charlie Bassett decided the only way to keep order was to ban the very symbol of the frontier, the Colt revolver. Visitors checked their sidearms with the marshal before stepping onto Front Street. Ignore the rule, and you risked arrest or worse. The irony was exquisite. The peacemaker itself, outlawed in the town that needed peace the most. Would you have surrendered your weapon at the gate, trusting the law to protect you? Or kept it on your hip, gambling that you'd outdraw the badge before the cuffs closed? Number 2, Tombstone's Ordinance, the law behind the gunfight. April 19th, 1881, Tombstone, Arizona. A booming silver town swimming in cash, whiskey, and tension. That day, the city council passed Ordinance Number 9, a simple law with explosive consequences. Anyone entering town had to surrender their firearms to the sheriff, a hotel, or a livery stable. Pistols, rifles, and even Bowie knives fell under the ban. For months, the rule simmered without incident. Then came October 26, when the Earps and Doc Holliday faced the Clanton and McClory brothers behind the OK Corral. They weren't simply settling a feud, they were enforcing a gun law. The cowboys had refused to disarm. 30 seconds later, the most famous shootout in Western history left 3 men dead and the myth of the lawless West immortalized. The truth? That firefight was about law and order, about who had the right to carry and who didn't. If you'd been there, would you have obeyed Ordinance Number 9 or defied it like the cowboys? Number 1, the duel, the outlawed ritual of the West. Hollywood crowned the duel as the heartbeat of the frontier. 2 men at high noon, sunlight glinting off polished steel. But across the American West, dueling was never heroic. It was criminal. From Texas to New Mexico, state and territorial statutes explicitly banned formal combat. Carrying a weapon into a public assembly or engaging in a duel could earn fines, prison, or the gallows if someone died. Judges equated it with murder. Even by the 1870s, newspapers called dueling a barbaric relic. Sheriffs saw it as wasted life masquerading as honor. The West had plenty of violence, but almost none of it followed the cinematic code we imagine. So ask yourself, if someone challenged you in 1880, would you have met them under the sun? Or walked away knowing the law, morality, and survival were already against you? The Wild West wasn't a world without rules. It was a world clawing toward them. For every gun drawn, there was a sheriff writing a new law. For every outlaw, a city council tightening control. The same weapons that built the frontier also threatened to destroy it, forcing communities to choose order over chaos. From Derringers hidden in sleeves to Winchesters locked away on trains, the most feared guns of the West weren't always the ones celebrated in legend. They were the ones forbidden by law. Each band tells a story of fear, progress, and the fragile balance between freedom and safety. So, which of these bands shocked you the most? And if you lived on the frontier, which weapon? This is Lead and Legacy, where history fires back. Subscribe for more untold truths of the American frontier.